Welcome Home, a podcast for veterans, about veterans by veterans, is a project of Willing Warriors and the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
Good morning. I'm Larry Ziliak, Director of Culinary Services here at the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run. And today our guest is retired Marine Corps Captain Garret Biss. He is a former Marine Corps pilot, and I asked him to join us because he's got a fascinating story about his transition out of the Marine Corps and into civilian life and the hardships and some of the problems that he faced. And he's actually turned that around and found a way to help other veterans through a number of programs that he hosts, and we'll get into that in a second. But Captain, really appreciate you joining us today. I really thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to be here, Larry. I really appreciate this opportunity to have a chat with you and to share some stuff that'll hopefully be inspiring or insightful for your great audience.
Yeah, I know it will. If you would, can we just start off, tell us a little bit about, joining the Marine Corps and what you flew and what your service was like?
Absolutely. So I joined the Marines in 1999, like many young Marines that enlist. I knew throughout my whole high school that as soon as I graduated, I wanted to run and stand on the yellow footprints and enlist in the Marine Corps, and didn't really know what I wanted my life to be after that. So I just got, had the next step in mind. So I enlisted in 99, had the opportunity to serve in Okinawa, Japan, and the headquarters of Marine Corps. And then I was selected for a commissioning program. And many years later, through various flight schools and many PCS moves, found myself flying the KC-130 Juliet, the Hercules, which is a very sporty cargo plane, as I like to say.
Nice and slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. And when did you separate?
In 2015. So I don't know, strangely enough, I think when looking back on it, I was offered an early retirement. So after they spent all the money to train me and prepare me to be a pilot, I was one of the few MOSs selected for an early retirement as they were kind of downsizing the force. So I got out after 16 and a half years in 2015.
Wow. What did you do after you got out? What did you have in mind? What did you think was going to happen? You were going to find work as a pilot? What was your plan?
Yeah, I didn't, so it was a confluence of some excitement and some sensed adventure in the next chapter of my life, and also terrified and petrified with fear that with an uncertainty that I would be able to perform or be successful or make a decent contribution in the civilian world. I recognized that I had a great military career and I got, a lot of promotions and awards and I was doing well in the military, but I didn't know if any of that would translate to this vast civilian experience that we have. So I had a lot of other passions, and I'd say that there were a lot of excuses that I had, or a lot of things that I said I would want to do in my life if I was in the Marine Corps, whether it was doing some water work with a nonprofit, doing some professional speaking, or doing some real estate investing, a whole long list of things. So when they gave me that opportunity to retire early, I was like, oh man, I better make good on all these things I've told myself and told others that I would like to do. So I did a lot of them. Started a water nonprofit called 1 Million Goal, and we have a goal to help 1 million people get access to clean water. We do that by funding well projects in Africa and traveling into Central America to provide some water purification systems. I do a little bit of flying these days with the Civil Air Patrol, certainly not a full-time thing and not as many hours as I'd like to fly, but it keeps me airborne a little bit. And then over, a couple of years, I kind of, navigating my life journey, my life path, I found my way into a real passion for and a need with recovery coaching. So working with individuals that have struggled or suffered in their life, either with addictions or other behaviors, and really need some mentorship and some help and guidance to get back to a better place.
I separated in 83. And when I left the Air Force, there was no program for transitioning. It was like, here's your ticket home. We'll see you. Thanks for trying out. And
right.
What was it like for you with the Marine Corps in when you separated? Was there a
2015.
TAPS program? Were there any resources for you?
There was, and yes, there certainly is an attempt to help veterans transition, and some things are done kind of well, and there's a lot of holes and a lot of gaps, and that became more and more apparent to me as my transition kind of processed or moved forward. And what I realized is in that TAPS class, so, think back to when you first enlist or when you go to officer candidate school in the military, they spend how many, hundreds of thousands of dollars in weeks and months trying to transition you from a civilian to a military member. Well, on the way out, I remember getting about a week, so maybe less than 40 hours of classes, which is, PowerPoint slides preparing me for that transition out of the military. So certainly not equivalent to or the same kind of level of care and support they put in the front. And understandably so. I mean, I get it. The mission of our military forces is to create service members that can serve our country. But the big challenges that I face, that TAPS classes or TRS, as they call them, some of the services, it really focused on preparing for some relatively simple things like preparing a resume, figuring out where you're, how do you get on apartmentfinder.com and figure out a place to live. And really looked at some of, from a professional or logistics aspect. And what I found woefully missing was any preparation for really even much discussion around the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual challenges that most, if not all, veterans face when they transition out of the military.
I think it's getting better, despite the fact that, a lot of the issue revolves around money, and they don't see it as money well spent because they're spending it on people who are leaving. But I think it's so important, and as you well know, there's a lot of veterans, yourself, myself included, that experience problems when they separate, and they're lost. They miss that tribe. They miss that comradeship. They have problems with the VA, and the VA provides what I think is very good health care when you can get it. It's a struggle. And unfortunately, there's a lot of veterans that self-medicate and turn to drugs and alcohol to help numb the pain. And, the suicide rate, depending on where you're sourcing your numbers, is anywhere from 17 to 24 a day for veterans, which is just too high. And I wonder what you think. I know your programs, talk a little bit about now your program, your recovery coaching, which is through your program called Valiant Path. And I just find it so interesting because it's simple, but yet really, really impactful because it zeroes in on the real important points of what is affecting veterans the most. So if you could just tell us a little bit about how you came to understand this process that you've put together and you help other veterans with at Valiant Path.
Yeah, certainly. So a lot to kind of unpack there. So one thing you talked about the veteran suicide rate. I've also seen some studies that are starting to include not just the intentional taking of a veteran's life, but also the many other preventable deaths when veterans are engaging in high-risk behaviors for the thrill seeking or the adrenaline rush or accidental overdoses. When we add those numbers in, I've seen as high as 40 or 44 a day. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of loss. When we think of the millions of veterans, or the 18 million veterans in our country right now, that all kind of raise their hands, step forward. There's way too many of them, a percentage of them, that are struggling. And what I've focused on for the last couple of years is supporting individuals that are really at that far end of the spectrum of their suffering. And one of the beautiful things I see in our country is that there's thousands, if not tens of thousands, of organizations now that are supporting veterans that are experiencing some severe mental health challenges or addiction challenges or just that transitional trauma from transitioning out. So that's beautiful to be serving those veterans that are really struggling. But what about the 10 or 15 million other veterans that maybe they're not suffering so much that they're, clinically diagnosable? They're just really not living the full potential. They're really not living the best version of their life. They're doing well, but they could certainly be doing much better. So recently, Valiant Path, we've started to expand and look at what can we do to help those veterans that are doing okay, but still something's missing. They're not experiencing their full potential. They're not experiencing the full joy and happiness and impact that they should be because of what they're capable of and certainly what they've sacrificed in the past. Really excited about some opportunities to do that. What we focus on with Valiant Path is centered around recovery coaching or just coaching, life coaching in general. And the difference is for those that aren't familiar, so there's clinical services. So if you go to see a therapist or you go to treatment, there's clinical services. My understanding of clinical care is they do a great job of identifying something that's wrong with an individual. So if there's a diagnosable condition, they'll diagnose them, that individual, and then they will help that person through their therapy or their treatment mitigate the negative effects of whatever that diagnosis is, whatever that ailment is. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the spectrum, there is what I understand as coaching, and really what we focus on is identifying what's right with somebody, what's going well with somebody, what are the strengths that they have, what are some things that we can leverage to move their life to a better place, to help them, to climb up the ladder or help get to a better expression of their life. Mm-hmm. So that's really how, and because of that, coaching and clinical services can play very well together, creating a holistic model to help somebody advance. And for a lot of individuals that either they've tried therapy or they don't think they're suffering too badly or that there's not something so wrong with them that they need clinical care, many individuals find a tremendous amount of support and growth and opportunity through various coaching programs, especially like Valiant Path.
So if you would just hit on the points that I'm just going to take a little from your TED Talk, which was connection, authenticity, and the sense of meaning. And tell us a little bit about each of those.
Yeah, certainly. So I've understood, and this is, through my own journey and years of reflection and then studying and some certification work that I've gone through. But what became clear to me after a number of years of transitioning out is that a lot of veterans suffer, way too many veterans suffer. But it was never really clear to me why so many veterans suffer or struggle when they get out of the military. Certainly, there's a lot of veterans that struggle because of bottled emotions or undealt with, unprocessed traumas or experiences while they were in the military. But there's many more veterans than that end up struggling. So one thing that was curious to me is, there can be veterans that experience horrific things and very challenging times in their service, but they don't seem to suffer the most until after they transition out from the military. And what I realized was we have three fundamental human needs. So we are hardwired for connection. As individuals, as animals, we're hardwired to be connected to a tribe. We need that connection for our sense of safety, our ability to survive, and for more fundamental things like our ability to regulate emotions. So with that strong sense of connection, we have this basis or this foundation to be able to deal with some of the hard times that we face. So for a lot of veterans, while they're still in the service and they're still connected with that tight sense of brotherhood and sisterhood that they experience in the service, they have the capacity to endure, to deal with some of those really challenging and really hard times that they faced in the past. Mm-hmm. However, when they transition out of the military, that sense of connection that we have in the military is something that very few, if any, veterans can replicate or experience when they transition out. When you're in the military, we express our level of connection through, I would be willing to go into battle and be by your side. I'm willing to go into going into the darkest places and do some of the hardest things, and I'll be there by your side to support you and to even lay down my life for you if it comes to it. That's not a level of connection that's really expressed outside of the military. So when we lose that, when we transition out, that's a tremendous loss that we have, not only to our sense of safety and survival, but also just the basic ability to emotionally regulate and to deal with hard and challenging times. So that's something that's lost right away. And then one thing that kind of plays with that level of connection is authenticity, or our permission to be our authentic self. As any veterans, sometimes we feel more comfortable when we're around other veterans because we're certainly a unique tribe of individuals. We come from a unique cloth, if you will. And there's some behaviors and idiosyncrasies that are very normal and common in the military. But as I found, and as many veterans I've talked to find, when they transition out of the military, they don't really feel welcome to show up as they are. Whether it's their unacceptable or dark sense of humor, or some of their beliefs, some of their behaviors, some of the ways that they've developed can feel a little off-putting or inappropriate in the civilian world. And when we experience that, it really forces us to kind of hide a part of ourselves or a portion of ourselves, which then begins to affect or erode our sense of self-worth, our sense of confidence, and just that comfort in being who we are. Mm-hmm. So these two things create a huge challenge. And again, when individuals are still in the service, maybe they've experienced a lot of hardships over years in the service. When they're in the service, they have these two needs met. So they have the capacity to overcome some of the challenges and really deal with those hardships in a more productive or healthy way. So that's why the challenge out of the military can be such a hard time. And the last thing I'll talk about in the TEDx talk, and for anybody that's interested, you can go to unspokentrauma.vet and you can watch the TEDx talk. It's only about 11 minutes long. And this third thing that I bring up in the TEDx talk is our human need for a sense of meaning. So we need this sense of meaning and purpose in our life. For one, it provides direction for us. It helps contextualize things. It can be a source of fuel to be engaged in things and to make a contribution. But also, as I learned, meaning, a sense of meaning can also be our capacity to endure suffering, to endure those hard times that we face. So when we have a strong sense of meaning, we're able to lean into some hardships. We're able to lean into some very difficult things because there's such a sense of meaning tied to that sacrifice that we're making.
One of the things I think of when you lay those 3 points out, I think that's also a roadmap for veteran service organizations that want to support and provide services for veterans, is that they are going to be able to make stronger inroads into the veteran community if they are kind of adopting those 3 points as a roadmap themselves, providing a connection for the veterans and allowing them to be authentic and also giving them meaning and a sense of purpose. I think right off the bat, I think of Team Rubicon. I mean, that's their mission in a nutshell, what you described right there.
Absolutely.
And I think Team Rubicon is a great example of an organization that puts those points together. And I would hope other organizations would look to do that. I think they're going to make a greater impact on the veteran community that they serve. I also think, too, that, sense of meaning is so important for everybody, but especially for veterans, because their life has just changed so much more than most people. When you move from a job, even from school to a job or between jobs, it's nowhere close to what a veteran experiences when they've come out of that rigorous lifestyle where it's just organized, things are provided for them, things are expected of them, and then they're just sort of set free into the community to find their own way. And one of the things that we try to talk to veterans about a lot, especially transitioning, retiring veterans, is, you're going to have to pay for services. Okay, no more can you walk down to the legal office and give them a letter that's an issue, and they're going to handle it for you. You don't want to not get a lawyer because you don't want to pay. And so it's such a radical life change that being amongst other veterans and having that sense of purpose, I think, is so important. Today's veteran, what's the number one problem that you see that today's veteran faces?
Yeah, this ties together a couple of things that you mentioned. For one, back to the TAP classes or TRS classes that are really focused on finding a profession or finding a vocation when individuals transition out. And I don't think this is spelled out in the TAP or TRS classes. Maybe it's just, an innate thing that a lot of veterans carry with them, but there's so much focus on the dollar sign that somebody is going to make when they get out. Like that's the number one criteria. That's the wicket that a lot of veterans are focusing on. Maybe where they want to live, but usually the highest criteria is how much they can make. So they're looking for professions where they can make a certain amount of money and not focusing on so much on that sense of meaning. That's an abrupt wake up call for a lot of individuals when you wake up every morning and you know that your sense of meaning is to protect your loved ones, to protect America. Everything that you do is looked at through the lens of life or death, because that's, with a lot of the things that we focus on in the military. And then when you transition out and now your responsibility is, improving an efficiency in a company or earning an extra dollar for the company or making a customer happy, these things don't translate very well or fulfill that same sense of meaning that we're used to. And that creates a tremendous void. And it's that void not only the void of connection, but that existential void or that existential crisis that a lot of veterans seek relief through, some challenging addictive substances or behaviors. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges, that not knowing. And if I could do anything, if I could offer anything, or the big reason for the TEDx talk is I just wanted to plant a seed for transitioning veterans that, heck, these are some of the mental, emotional, and spiritual challenges that you're going to face. And this is why, so that they can at least have a seed planted for a sense of understanding. So when these challenges do come up, it's not such a shock. One of the biggest issues that I faced was knowing that there was a void inside, knowing that I felt something was missing, knowing that I wasn't operating or wasn't performing as well as I remembered that I could, but not really being able to put my finger on why. And it took years for me to figure that out in my own journey. And as much as I can, I want to prevent other veterans from that potential years of suffering as they navigate these challenges on their own.
Mm-hmm. And your Valiant Path is a business for you. Is that correct? I mean,
that's correct.
Yeah. So your recovery coaching, veterans can reach out to you and they can hire you and engage your services through your webpage.
That's correct. Yeah, you can get a Valiant Path if you're curious about it. And again, this is for veterans that have either struggled with addictive substances or behaviors. Maybe they started a recovery journey, or just veterans that feel like something's missing, feeling like they're not firing on all cylinders, or there's some void in their life and they can't really put a finger on it. We support, veterans through a holistic process which looks at and focuses on this lost sense of connection, authenticity, and meaning. So we follow a process of helping individuals reconnect with first themselves and then the tribe, and then get reconnected with their own identity and who they are. I talk to a lot of veterans that say, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what's missing. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'd like to change in my life. I don't really know what I want anymore because I've been so disconnected from who I am as I'm trying to navigate this journey. So we focus a lot on that, helping veterans get reconnected with their authenticity and who they truly are and what makes them special. And then invest that, or then move that forward into regaining that sense of meaning through regaining a sense of joy and making sure that they're inviting things in their life and engaging in things that can provide that biggest return. So for anybody that's interested, you can certainly go to valiantpath.vet. And I do have one special thing for Larry, for any of your listeners that would like a little taste maybe of what this kind of program or process could look like. For anybody that's interested, you can go to thewarriorreset.com. And there's it's free to your listeners. They can engage in a 10-day warrior reset where I offer some of the most efficacious and effective, quick processes and tools that I've come across that can help an individual kind of experience that reset, emotional, mental, spiritual reset, and get back to feeling like a better version of themselves, back in the driver's seat, and making that progress. So for anybody that wants a little bit of reset, maybe you feel like you're not showing up as the best version of yourself or as good as you could have. Maybe there's something missing and you can't really put a finger on it. That's a beautiful way and very quick and effective way to experience a little shift that will help you get back into a better place.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful. I'm going to make sure that I include that and your other web pages in the show notes, because I want listeners to check out your TED Talk, scour these web pages. There's some great information on them. I think, too, that the value here is, like you say, it's those veterans that often overlooked because they're not exhibiting clinical issues, but they could be better. Or we want to at least reach out to them so that they don't go down a path where they're eventually exhibiting clinical issues that require some serious intervention, either drug, alcohol abuse. So really, I can't thank you enough for coming on and telling us about this program. And these 3 points, I think, are a compass for not only veteran service organizations, but for veterans themselves and anybody who wants to kind of work in that veteran service organization space. I would direct everyone to see the TED Talk. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And certainly anybody who, if you are a veteran, if you love a veteran, if you want to work with veterans, certainly check out that talk. You can go to unspokentrauma.vet. And if you're a veteran, I've had veterans reach out to me and say, And, sadly, Vietnam era veterans that reached out and said, after I heard that talk, it helped me put a finger on and understand something that I've been struggling with for years, and I was never really able to articulate or to comprehend it. So if you're a veteran and something resonates with you in that talk, it could be a great thing to share with other people that know and love you, or that you're, connected with, so they can better understand some of the challenges and struggles that veterans face, especially during their transition.
Yeah, put that TED Talk out on your social media. Everybody needs to see it. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Captain. I know our listeners really appreciate it as well. So thanks for coming on again.
Thank you.
For our listeners, we'll have another episode next Monday morning at 0500. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can reach us at podcast@willingwarriors.org. Until then, thanks for listening.
The Welcome Home podcast is brought to you by Willing Warriors, a nonprofit organization serving active duty service members and veterans since 2012. To learn more, please visit our webpage at willingwarriors.org.